We're in the process of redefining our relationship with the United States. That's ongoing. Mr. LeBlanc and others leading those discussions, but working very much in partnership around this table in terms of our priorities and how we're defining it, but also taking matters very much into our own hands.
Our top story this hour, Prime Minister Mark Carney is meeting with provincial and territorial leaders for the first time since taking on the role. The premiers are all in agreement that these talks are crucial in the wake of tariff threats from Washington. Fast-tracking infrastructure projects and removing internal trade barriers are at the top of the agenda. For more on this, I want to bring in Kathleen Wynne. She's the former Premier of Ontario, and she's joining us in Toronto, and appreciate you once again taking the time to talk to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
So Ontario Premier, I don't know if you saw this, Doug Ford, he strolled into this meeting singing "Love is in the Air." What does that signal to you about the mood among the premiers heading into their meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney?
Well, I saw even, Doug Ford aside, but he looked pretty cheerful, but everybody looked like they were having a pretty collegial conversation as I watched them walk into the meeting. I think that's a good sign, Andrew. I think that because there have been lots of conversations between officials before a meeting like this happens, if everyone's in a pretty good mood, that suggests to me that they are looking forward to a productive discussion. Now, I could be wrong. It could fall apart. That has happened. But I suspect that because this is so high stakes for everybody, particularly for Prime Minister Carney, but it's high stakes for everybody sitting around that table, I suspect they're going to do their utmost to come out with a pretty cohesive message at the end of it.
And tell me what you mean by the high stakes. And it would seem as though Mark Carney has set those stakes high, or at least the expectations quite high in terms of what will come out of this meeting.
Well, that's true. But I think there is, the stakes for Prime Minister Carney that I think are the highest are people's confidence in him. We just went through an election, and you heard language like he was the man for this moment, that his skill set and his experience was tailor-made to take on the challenges that we're seeing from south of the border from Trump. And so I think some, perhaps unrealistically, I think people are expecting that he's going to be able to make progress very, very quickly. And yes, he has set the expectation high. I think that's probably a good thing. I think it's consistent with what people are looking to him for. And it also brings into that room with the first ministers a bar that they need to live up to, So I think the confidence of people in Mark Carney is kind of the highest stake here. Obviously, the high stakes for all of us are that we have a unified front, that we have the leadership in this country working together so that we can take on the challenges of Trump. That's the overarching environment that we're working in. But for this meeting, we need a cohesive message at the end. We need for there to be some sense that, okay, these people can work together. We can actually make some progress.
So you've been at these First Ministers meetings before. Does this one feel different? I mean, it sometimes feels as though it's like the premiers versus the Prime Minister. This time it seems as though it's the Prime Minister saying, let's meet in Saskatchewan. Let's get together, and soon after the election.
I think this is a unique circumstance, certainly one that we haven't seen for a long time. And we've never seen a circumstance when the United States was as hostile on these particular issues, or at least certainly not for decades. So I think that it is extremely important. These meetings are always important. They're always important in terms of relationship building, but you're right. They are often more contentious in terms of people coming in with different asks and different demands. I think this time, of course, there are different expectations of particular projects in each of the provinces. And let's be honest, there's a real concern about the East-West relationship, and I think it's very smart that the meeting is being held in Saskatoon because Premier Smith from Alberta needs to be, she needs to be part of the conversation in a way that allows her to come out with something positive at the end of it as well. So I think all of those are harbingers of a good message, and it is indicative of how important this meeting is, that we're paying so much attention to it. Quite frankly, yes, I've been part of those meetings, but I didn't always get, we didn't always get a lot of press because there wasn't an expectation that whatever was going to come out was going to be so consequential.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a level of engagement and interest in the story because of Trump, because of this time that we appear to be living in. So at the end of the day, what do you expect to come out of this meeting?
Well, there are two things I want to say. I am expecting, because of the tenor of the mood going in, I am expecting that there will be a positive message. I don't know, obviously, I don't know what the details of that will be, but I'm expecting that there will be some indication that there's a process for working together, whether it's around a major energy project that crosses a number of provincial boundaries, whether it's more progress on the one economy, the interprovincial trade barriers. I think that there will be a mix of those things. But I'm also expecting that there will be some indication that there's going to be a serious conversation with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people, because all of these projects are important. The whole issue of national unity is important to include Indigenous people. So those two things I'll be looking for.
And since you brought up national unity, just generally, I'm wondering what you think about where we are in terms of national unity, with the threat of an Alberta separatism referendum, with the Parti Québécois, who could be back in power in Quebec in a year from now, who have also promised a referendum. I mean, it seems to me just interesting how there was this real sense of unity, but there are also these tensions that are out there.
Yeah, so it's a more precarious moment than it would be otherwise because of those tensions. But again, that just raises the stakes on this conversation and these relationships. I firmly believe, Andrew, that the majority of the population across the country, but even in the provinces where there is this tension, the majority of the population believes that if there is a way for Canadians to work together, that we will all be better off. I believe that. And I know there are individuals and there are pockets of people who don't agree with that, but I think the majority of people do. And so if this meeting can be the start of a process where there is that kind of building of national unity based on investments, based on collaboration between provinces and between the federal government and provinces, in a way that we haven't seen in the last few decades, then I think we'll be on a good path. If that doesn't happen, if those provinces don't feel that they are a part of the conversation, then I think we're in trouble, and we will continue to have a precarious national conversation.
And so just finally, what's it like inside? I mean, is it hard to have a conversation with 13, 14 leaders?
It's actually not. I always said to my colleagues, I wish that the people of Canada could see the actual conversation, because my experience was that you lost the sense of partisanship. You couldn't necessarily say, well, that's something that a Conservative premier would say. That's something an NDP premier would say, a Liberal premier. We did have, I felt, very open conversations about national interest, obviously with our own take on it because of the provinces that we represent. But I found them extremely helpful, and particularly when the Prime Minister is there, there's that, it kind of closes the loop, we've got everybody at the table, except I would say in this instance, not having First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people at the table, I think creates an issue. So I would say that's a gap. But having the meetings and having the conversations, from my perspective, was very positive and built relationships that we could then rely on when there were more difficult moments.
Appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Take care.
That is former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne.